Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome into the KSL Stream Center. I'm Shara Park. Hey, good afternoon. Actually, it's still morning. Good morning to you. 11 o'clock, 11:04 to be exact. I'm excited to talk to you here in the KSL Stream Center. This is a behind-the-scenes story situation where we have an opportunity to bring somebody in to go a little more in-depth about a story that aired on KSL TV and get a little more insight into what went behind the story. I've got our guest here today. It is none other than Matt Gephardt, our investigative reporter here at KSL TV. Matt, this is the first time we've had you here in the KSL Stream Center, so welcome.
Thank you. Long-time viewer, first-time caller.
Yeah, there you go. Hey, I'm excited because this is an interesting story you had on last night. This is something I think that impacts really all of us. And it has at one point or another, and this goes a little deeper because this is a situation that involved a vehicle and a barrel.
Yeah.
I think we've all been on I-15 where we've had a rock chip or something, but this is a little bit bigger here. So set us up on this story and how this guy came about and how you got to know him and who this is.
Yeah, so the guy we featured in our story last night, his name is John Winder. He lives in Sandy. He was driving in Draper, and all of a sudden an orange barrel on a windy day came flying and pelted his car. And, unlike some things that maybe some road hazards that we deal with, your rock chips, your potholes, ice falling from a overpass, whatever the case may be. This was something that was put there by a human being. And so he says, well, listen, I didn't put it there and it's done damage to my car and I got some estimates and it's going to be like somewhere in the neighborhood of $1,500 to $2,000. And I don't think I should have to pay that. And I don't think I should have to go through my insurance to get that fixed. And so because he was driving on a state road, he said this is probably a Utah Department of Transportation issue. Reached out to them. They said, no, it's not us. Talk to this other construction company that was permitted to do work there. So we reached out to them and they said, no, it wasn't us. Go talk to the state.
So now you're going in circles.
Yeah, and so he basically found himself in the situation where everyone's pointing the finger at each other and he's going, he couldn't get out of it. He didn't know what to do, and that's how ultimately he got to the end of his rope and decided it was time to holler at us.
I love this, and this is where Gephardt, this is where he shines, because you get a story like this and you think, I'm going to get to the bottom of this. And this is where I love this too, because this guy has a banjo that gets involved.
Yes, that's true. I didn't know what to expect when I pull up and the guy's standing in his driveway waiting for the interview. And it's the first time in like the 25 years I've been doing this, I pulled up and somebody's standing there with a musical instrument waiting to greet me. But it made for television gold.
Great story. Okay, we're going to watch the story and then we're going to talk to Matt, because I have some real questions. Because like I said, I think we've all been there when we've had something happen to our vehicle that wasn't our fault. And I think there are questions to be asked in terms of what do we do in a situation that could be similar to this. So let's watch this story. Again, this aired last night on KSL 5 News at 10. Interesting story, and then we'll get to those questions here. So Matt, I'm going to play your story, and then we'll get to that here. So this is Matt's story from last night.
It was a bit askew, so John took it to a body shop.
Their bid was $1,970. Right
$2,000 of damage from an orange barrel.
Yeah.
Now, 114th South is a state road, so John filed a claim with the Utah Department of Transportation. Their response? This denial. UDOT pointing the finger at a company they say was doing work on the road at the time, Granite Construction. John would need to call them. He did, but he was again rebuffed.
And they said, well, we weren't working there that day.
Somebody was responsible for the orange barrel that was there that day, and it sure wasn't John.
I feel like I'm getting the runaround.
With everyone denying responsibility and fearful that the cost of the repairs is going to fall on him, John decided it was time to call me.
Who do you think is responsible?
Oh, I don't know. It's either the state or Granite.
Actually, no. Neither one is responsible, according to UDOT spokesperson John Gleason.
When you reached out, we took the opportunity to look back on the information, and unfortunately, we provided incorrect information to Mr. Winder.
Yeah, UDOT had told John that it was Granite Construction, but in reality, there was another company out there doing road work that day.
It was actually a permit job and an unrelated contractor, somebody that didn't have anything to do with UDOT.
Now, typically, when one of their barrels gets loose, UDOT does not take responsibility for the damage, Gleason says.
It's typically seen as something that's naturally occurring.
But in this case, even though it was not a UDOT barrel, since the state sent John on a goose chase, they have opted to step up.
We could ask him to go back and file it with the proper company now, but it's 6 months after the fact, and that just wouldn't be right. So we want to do right by Mr. Winder and make sure that he's taken care of.
An orange barrel. This is a check from UDOT.
And just like that, months after filing a claim with UDOT, John got this check in the mail to cover damages. Why he's so happy, he could just sing.
So I called Matt Gephardt and he got my car fixed. Hey!
Hey, John Winder from, is that the famous Winders from West Valley?
Of relation, yes.
Of relation. Okay, first of all, I love the banjo. Fabulous character there. By the way, anybody watching on Facebook or YouTube, if you got any questions for Mr. Matt Gephardt, go ahead and chime in. You're welcome to ask them. I'm watching those comments come in. You can, I'll ask them to Matt for you. Okay, Matt, so the question here. If this ever happens to you, I mean, you solved this, you got to the bottom of it, somebody paid up, they got him the fix that he needed or that money to get that fix, but that doesn't always happen for folks. So what do? You get in this situation, what is the first call you make?
So the first thing I would say you do is if it's safe to do so, and it's not always in the case of driving down a highway or what have you, but is pull over and take lots of pictures, because as this story emphasized, and as many stories we've reported before have emphasized, you don't know who's responsible. In this case, the Department of Transportation stepped up and paid, but really it wasn't even their barrel. They paid because they'd sent him on a goose chase of sorts, and that was why they ultimately decided to step up and take care of John. But really, it can be a process. And so it starts with figuring out who is responsible. So in the case of an orange barrel, who put it there? Was it a private construction company? Mm-hmm. Was it the Department of Transportation? Was it? And that can involve a process, a laborious process that involves pulling permits and reaching out to people. And so the first thing I would do is I'd pull over and I would take lots of pictures and I would document exactly what happened, and I would call the police.
And document the barrel.
Document the barrel.
Whatever it was that hit your car.
Document the barrel, call the police, get a police report, get all of this sort of evidence that you can then use to try to ultimately fight with whatever agency or whatever insurance company may ultimately be responsible. And that also then gets into a tricky thing of, the people who write the laws, or when it comes to government, are also the people who don't necessarily want to be paying out claims. They are, in many cases, insured all by themselves. And so you run into situations where they have immunity. So part of this evidence gets into things like being able to prove negligence, right? So the government, UDOT, enjoys a wide array of governmental immunity. They generally don't pay on barrel hitting car claims. They say the wind came along, that's an act of nature. In insurance terms, the official term is act of God. Right. In the case of a pothole, same sort of deal. We've seen it with the Department of Public Safety, where like ice maybe collects on a bridge and falls down and damages a car. Did they do enough to get? They call that act of nature. They generally don't pay. If, however, you can demonstrate negligence, hey, look, this barrel had no business being here. Look at the condition of this barrel. Clearly, somebody should have noticed this and not put this on. There's no way that little black anchor that's supposed to hold the thing to the road could have possibly held this thing down. Look how bent and broken it is. You can then make a case for, you had negligence here. Your insurance company should step up and pay me. And that's where having all that documentation and that photographic evidence can go a long way.
Documentation is the key.
Yeah, very much. Yeah, really. But what can you prove? And ultimately, you may be out of luck. But if damage is severe enough, it's going to come down to what you're able to prove, and maybe what you're able to prove if you have to make this case to a judge or a jury.
Do you call UHP? Do you make that kind of call? I know you get frustrated and you want to make that, but those troopers are busy. And is it really a case for law enforcement?
100. I say 100% yes.
Oh, okay.
100% yes. And now the caveat to that is when you do report things to the police, that also makes it a report to your insurance company. So there's some calculations you want to do there as to whether or not you necessarily even want your insurance company to know about such things, especially with what insurance rates are doing right now. But it's just evidence. And yes, I know they're busy, and some of it is a matter of how much time do you have, right, to sit there, because this is not going to be a high priority situation. Nobody's in imminent danger, so it can take a while for a police officer to respond. In this case, it would have been, I think, probably would have been Draper Police, as it happened not on the highway. But yeah, I would get that police report, and again, just more evidence to help you ultimately if you are going to be wanting to fight this thing.
I'm gonna pull up some of these. I mean, these are just live looks. I'm looking at UDOT cameras just around the state right here, and traffic. I mean, we've all been on I-15 or somewhere in the state where something pops up, something's hit us or whatnot. I want to hear people's stories. So if you're watching, if you've hit something on I-15, tell me what you've hit. If you've ever hit something with your car that just came out of nowhere, did some damage, I want to know your story. Tell me what that is. I'm not kidding, Matt. I hit a dog. It was awful.
Yeah.
It was the saddest, scariest thing. I know it's not a barrel. It wasn't construction. It was a sad moment in my life, getting off the 6 North exit and a dog suddenly showed up on I-15.
Yeah.
There was no getting around it. I did. It was a really sad day in my life. But, things happen, right?
Sure.
Things happen. My other question here is, what about like a rock?
Sure.
Right? So we've all been around these big
Yeah.
trucks that are driving down. And I've always wondered, is there any repercussion for these trucks that are hauling these massive rocks and put a big old crack in my windshield? Have you ever done those stories?
I have. And
Who can pay for that? Because that's not fair.
So again, it comes down to what you can prove. It's absolutely not fair. And when your windshield's gashed, but I have literally done this story where somebody had a dash cam and they saw the rock come from the truck. So right, because you see this all the time. Like I was driving past the quarry there, and the rock flew off and it damaged my windshield, and now I've got this thing I've got to deal with. And they basically say, nope, wasn't us, can't prove it's us.
Well, I can prove it's them.
Well, and I've done one where they had a rock cam, or a dash cam, and you saw the rock emanate from the truck, and you're going, ha, I got him. And no, this was still a claim that was denied, and also ultimately that particular one was litigated, and they lost. And because while the law is crystal clear, you are responsible to cover your load. You are responsible. Shara Park is not allowed to drive with skis on her roof that she forgets to strap down. If those go flying off and hit somebody, you're responsible for that. And in cases like that, it's easy to prove. But in the case of rocks in particular, how do we know that rock fell off the truck versus just being kicked up by you and not being caught by a mud flap? So, Shara, you'd be responsible if skis flew off the top of your car,
right.
But you wouldn't be responsible if you drove over a rock and it kicked off your tire and flew up and hit the guy behind you. That's not your responsibility to swerve around and miss pebbles in the road. And so, ultimately, the rock chips one are very frustrating for folks and also very, very, very difficult to prove.
So that is really frustrating. Okay, but the barrel story, that's so interesting because we are a construction state. I don't know how else to say that. We have a lot of road construction in our state.
I'll say it the way someone once told it to me as a joke. The orange barrel should be the state tree of Utah.
It really should, or at least the state. What else could you call it? The state
plastic tree.
The state plastic tree of Utah.
The state eyesore.
The state eyesore. But the thing is, we're growing here in Utah, and
sure.
we have to keep up with infrastructure here in Utah.
Sure.
And so it is what it is. We have those happening, but it is good to know what to do in that case. And we're going to have these cases pop up from time to time. But John Winder's story is a perfect example of what you need to know and what your rights really are, what you should be prepared to do in case that happens to you.
Yeah, and the short answer here is he got paid, but that won't necessarily always be the case for you.
Yeah.
There are acts of God, and sometimes you just have to go through your own insurance. And wind and potholes and a snowy day that creates a pothole, there's only so much responsibility you can put on someone else for that.
Okay. Well, Matt Gephardt, you are awesome. I love your ability to tell these stories and get to the bottom of things. Because, folks, sometimes, you know what? You feel like you're at a loss and you don't know who to go to. So, Matt Gephardt, I lost you there.
Here I am.
There you are. You're still
Shara
here.
Park, you are awesome. Thanks for having me on.
Well, you are a voice for these folks. How do they get a hold of you if they want you to look into something and hopefully get them some answers?
My email address, my phone number are out there. You can find them on ksltv.com. The number is 385-707-6153. That rings to a cell phone that sits in our office. And you can text that. You can email me, matt@ksl.com. It doesn't get easier than that. My name is matt@ksl.com. Listen, anything, I get asked frequently what constitutes a story, what makes me in my story selection, and the short answer to that is if you and I are sitting around and you tell me a story and it makes me want to pound my fist on the desk and say, that ain't right, fair. That ain't fair, we got something, and we use our investigative skills to go from there.
I love that. I lost you because I had your email, and so for some reason it didn't want to show people your email.
Matt at KSL.com. We'll tell it even if they don't want to show it.
Matt at KSL.com. Reach out to him. He will at least look into it and try to get you some answers. Matt, I appreciate your time. Thank you so much. And good for John Winder making up a song and telling his story. We appreciate it. All right, Matt. Have a good day. Thanks,
You too.
everybody. We'll see ya.